You are about to witness the unraveling of the world's greatest empire. The Year of the Four Emperors is not just a story of ancient politics, it's a lesson in how power structures fail. You will see how the legions, the backbone of Roman expansion, became the instrument of its internal decay. This investigation is for anyone who wants to understand the real reasons behind the fall of Rome, which began not with barbarian invasions, but with a political collapse from within, centuries earlier. The Augustan settlement created a political time bomb disguised as stability. Augustus concentrated ultimate military command under the emperor alone, while maintaining the facade of the old republic. This system relied entirely on the personal loyalty of soldiers to the princeps, not to the state. The Praetorian Guard's creation gave emperors a personal army stationed within Rome itself, a force whose proximity to power made them natural kingmakers. Meanwhile, regional commanders on the frontiers held unprecedented power over legions stationed far from the capital's oversight. These generals controlled the lives of thousands of professional soldiers who knew their commander better than any distant emperor. The succession mechanism remained deliberately vague, creating a power vacuum upon each emperor's death. There was no constitution, no clear line of inheritance. This ambiguity meant that force, not law, would ultimately determine the next ruler. The system operated on a fragile consensus that could shatter at any moment. Nero's reign exposed this fragility as military loyalty became purely transactional. When Nero lost the support of the Senate and the people, the legions began to calculate their options. Their allegiance had a price, and it was negotiable. The absence of clear rules meant the empire's vast military, designed for external conquest, now held the keys to internal power. A general with loyal legions could march on Rome itself. The Praetorian Guard, tasked with protecting the emperor, could just as easily remove him if their demands went unmet. This structural flaw ensured that the army, the empire's greatest asset, also became its most significant internal threat. The investigation into this catastrophic failure begins with a single event: the death of Nero. His demise was the first crack in the imperial facade, the trigger that would expose the fatal weakness Augustus had engineered into the very foundation of the Roman state. The legions were about to test the system's integrity, and the result would be a year of chaos that set a dangerous precedent for centuries to come. The stage was set for a confrontation that would prove the military's loyalty was the empire's most volatile commodity. The governor of Hispania Tarraconensis made a calculated bet with the 7 legions under his command. Galba's declaration against Nero was not a simple rebellion. It was a direct test of the system's integrity. He was probing the limits of the Augustan settlement, challenging the notion that power flowed only from the emperor to the provinces. The legions stationed along the Rhine frontier watched this development with intense interest. They measured their own strength against this new precedent, calculating the potential rewards of direct intervention. Galba's subsequent march to Rome revealed a critical vulnerability. An emperor's authority meant nothing without a broad military consensus. His journey demonstrated that the capital was defenseless against a determined provincial commander. To solidify his shaky claim, Galba attempted a traditional maneuver. He adopted Lucius Calpius Piso Frugi Licinianus as his heir. This was an effort to create artificial legitimacy, to graft his rule onto the ancient customs of the Republic. But the gesture was hollow. It failed to address the new reality of power. The Praetorian Guard's loyalty underwent a fundamental shift. Their allegiance moved from the institution of the emperor to the individual opportunity presented by each candidate. They saw Galba not as their rightful commander, but as a temporary patron whose favor could be withdrawn. Galba then committed a fatal error. He implemented severe austerity measures, refusing to pay the donative the Praetorians expected. This decision alienated the very soldiers who had enabled his rise to power. He treated their support as an obligation, not a transaction that required continuous payment. The system failed its first critical test. Military support proved to be entirely conditional and fleeting. A commander could march on Rome, but he could not command lasting loyalty without constant financial and political reinforcement. The trigger for this catastrophic chain reaction was Galba's perception of a power vacuum. He saw Nero's weakening grip and calculated that the legions would follow a viable alternative. His gamble exposed the fault line. It proved that the army's loyalty was the empire's primary currency, and it was already severely devalued. From within the palace, Otho observed these events. He recognized the profound weakness that Galba had exposed. The precedent was set. The first domino had fallen. The Praetorian Guard transformed from protectors to assassins in a single morning. Otho understood a fundamental truth of the new system. Control of the palace guard equated to control of the capital itself. His coup demonstrated with brutal clarity that the emperor's personal bodyguards could become his executioners. This was not a failure of security, it was the system operating as designed. The guards' proximity to power made them the ultimate arbiters within the city walls. The Senate's rapid acceptance of Otho revealed their complete powerlessness. Without an independent military force, their authority was purely theoretical. They could only ratify the decision already made by the Praetorians. This immediate capitulation underscored a seismic shift. Political legitimacy now derived from the endorsement of armed men, not from senatorial decree or ancestral tradition. Otho's brief reign, however, exposed the geographic limitation of his power base. His authority was a local phenomenon, confined to Rome. The real power resided with the frontier armies. The German legions under Vitellius were already marching south. They recognized the vacuum Otho had created. A regime born from a palace coup held no sway over commanders who controlled multiple legions. These provincial generals saw the capital not as the heart of the empire, but as a vulnerable prize. Vitellius's legions moved to test a new hypothesis. They would determine whether provincial forces could dictate imperial succession from 1,000 miles away. The Praetorian Guard's transformation was a direct consequence of the Augustan settlement. By placing a personal army inside Rome, Augustus gave them a unique strategic position. They became kingmakers because they controlled physical access to the emperor and the symbols of state. Their loyalty was the emperor's primary shield, but that loyalty was conditional. When an emperor like Galba failed to meet their terms, that shield could become a weapon aimed directly at him. The guard's role evolved from protection to a form of high-stakes brokerage. Otho fell because his support existed only within Rome's walls. He commanded the Praetorians, but he could not command the legions of the Rhine. His power was an illusion that shattered upon contact with a determined provincial army. The second emperor's death proved that controlling the capital was insufficient. True power required the allegiance of the frontier forces. Vitellius's advance signaled that the empire's center of gravity had shifted to its borders. The experiment in Praetorian kingmaking had lasted for mere months. The frontier was now striking back. The Rhine legions demonstrated that real power resided at the empire's edges. Vitellius's victory at Bedriacum proved a simple equation. Numerical superiority outweighed political legitimacy. His forces, hardened by frontier service, defeated Otho's army in a brutal engagement. This was not a contest of rightful claims, but a raw test of military strength. The battle established that a provincial commander could seize the throne through force alone. His march to Rome revealed the capital's profound defenselessness. The city had no permanent garrison capable of repelling a determined provincial army. The Praetorian Guard was a police force, not a field army. Vitellius's legions encountered no meaningful resistance on their journey south. This unimpeded advance exposed a critical flaw in the empire's security architecture. The center could not protect itself from the periphery. The new emperor's indulgence in Rome contrasted sharply with the discipline of the soldiers who brought him there. Vitellius engaged in lavish banquets and public spectacles. His behavior signaled a misunderstanding of the source of his power. He acted as if military victory had secured permanent control. This misjudgment created an opportunity for a challenger who understood the ongoing nature of the game. Vespasian watched these developments from Judea. He calculated the timing of his own intervention with precision. While Vitellius celebrated, Vespasian assessed his resources and built his coalition. The Eastern legions began coordinating their movements. They secured key provinces and communication lines. This methodical preparation marked a new phase in the crisis. It was no longer a reactive power grab, but a strategic campaign. Each emperor's death created more instability because it failed to re-establish a legitimate succession mechanism. The system incentivized violence as the primary means of political change. A military victory only demonstrated temporary superiority. It did not create a durable framework for peaceful transition. The absence of rules meant every vacancy was an open invitation to conflict. Vitellius's reign proved that controlling Rome was not equivalent to controlling the empire. His power base was narrow, reliant on the legions that marched with him. He failed to secure the broader loyalty of other military commands. The system now actively encouraged any general with legions to attempt a grab for power. The precedent was set. Vespasian's coalition building represented a sophisticated escalation. He was not just claiming power, he was constructing a new support structure from the ground up. The crisis was evolving from a series of coups into a full-scale civil war, with the Eastern legions mobilizing as a unified bloc against the temporary victor in Rome. The Judean commander approached power as an engineering problem. Vespasian did not act on a claim of right or a moment of opportunity. He conducted a strategic assessment of the empire's critical systems. His first operational move was to secure the grain supply from Egypt. This action demonstrated a fundamental understanding of power. Controlling the food supply to Rome gave him leverage that transcended military confrontation. A city without bread could not resist the siege for long. His supporters created a coordinated front across the entire Eastern province network. This was not a single legion rebelling, It was a systematic takeover of the administrative and logistical machinery of the East. Governors and legionary commanders aligned their actions, creating a unified bloc that moved with a single purpose. This level of coordination surpassed the isolated revolts of his predecessors. The Flavian forces then methodically isolated Vitellius's support. They targeted his supply lines and political allies before engaging his main army. This was a campaign of strategic envelopment designed to weaken the enemy long before the final battle. Vespasian delegated the military campaign to his son Titus. This division of labor was a critical innovation. Titus handled the tactical execution in Italy, allowing Vespasian to manage the political consolidation in the East. This separation of military and political command ensured that both fronts received focused leadership. The Second Battle of Cremona became the ultimate test of this systematic approach. The Flavian forces, under commanders like Marcus Antonius Primus, engaged Vitellius's legions in a brutal night battle. The engagement was less a test of bravery and more a validation of superior planning and coordination. The Flavian victory was comprehensive. What made Vespasian's consolidation different was its foundation. He understood that lasting power required controlling resources and infrastructure, not just commanding loyalty on a battlefield. His predecessors had won the capital, but failed to secure the empire. Vespasian's victory represented the triumph of systemic thinking over personal ambition. He built a power base that was geographically and economically diversified. The Flavians established a new, dangerous precedent. Imperial power now required the broad, active support of multiple key provinces and their military garrisons. A successful emperor had to be an administrator first, and a general second. This re-engineering of the power principle did not solve the underlying flaw. It merely raised the stakes, making future succession crises not just military contests, but continent-wide civil wars that would threaten the very integrity of the imperial structure. The system had been stress-tested to its breaking point and had not shattered, but it was permanently deformed. The Year of the Four Emperors created a permanent blueprint for military intervention. The precedent was now established beyond any doubt. An emperor could be made outside of Rome by the sheer force of provincial legions. The Augustan system's fatal flaw was no longer a theoretical weakness. It was an exposed vulnerability, visible to every general commanding troops on a frontier. The crisis of 69 CE demonstrated that the mechanism for transferring power was fundamentally broken. Subsequent emperors would operate under a new, permanent constraint. Their primary concern shifted from administering the empire to constantly managing military loyalty. Every decision, from taxation to foreign policy, was now filtered through the lens of how it would affect the army's morale and allegiance. An emperor who alienated the legions signed his own death warrant. This created a reactive form of governance where short-term stability was purchased with long-term concessions to the military. The Praetorian Guard's role as kingmaker became institutionalized. Their ability to make or break an emperor inside Rome was now an accepted part of the political landscape. They operated as a powerful lobby group, their support contingent on financial rewards and political influence. This internal pressure, combined with the external threat from provincial armies, placed the emperor in a perpetual state of siege. His authority was negotiable, his position never truly secure. The investigation concludes that the system contained the seeds of its own destruction from the moment Augustus concentrated military power. The flaw was not in the execution, but in the design. By making the army the ultimate arbiter of power, without creating a neutral succession mechanism, Augustus guaranteed that force would eventually replace law. Military loyalty, once the unshakable foundation of Roman expansion, became the empire's greatest vulnerability. The legions were a weapon that could be turned inward. The crisis of 69 CE was not an anomaly. It was the system operating exactly as designed. The events of that year were a stress test that revealed a catastrophic failure point. The fracture was permanent. From this point forward, the Roman Empire would be plagued by a cycle of military revolts and civil wars. The principle was set. Power flowed from the point of a sword, and the throne was a prize to be won by the strongest commander. This structural weakness would drain the empire's resources and focus for centuries, creating a pattern of instability that would ultimately contribute to its fragmentation. The army had broken the very state it was created to defend. The investigation reveals Rome's political collapse originated not with external barbarians, but with the military system Augustus engineered. The evidence points to a structural flaw. Any concentration of power without clear, neutral succession mechanisms contains inherent instability. The army became a weapon that could be turned inward. This case file on the year of the 4 emperors remains open. It serves as a permanent lesson for those who study how power structures fracture under stress. The empire's greatest strength became its fatal weakness, a design flaw that would haunt its rulers for centuries. The system failed its ultimate test,